Welcome to the Retire Ready podcast, the podcast that helps Canadians prepare for all that retirement brings. I'm your host, Scott Sather, founder, president, and financial planner at Awaken Wealth Management and portfolio manager with Awaken Investments of Aligned Capital Partners in Regina, Saskatchewan. Thanks for joining me today. So today's episode is part 4 of a 4-part series on financial advice and what to look for in a financial advisor. Today, we're going to answer your questions. Big thanks to those who have shared their questions with me. You can as well, if you have any suggestions for topics or guest speakers for the podcast or just general questions, by emailing me at info@retirereadypodcast.com. The 4 questions that I've been asked the most from this series on finding an advisor are: 1, what's the difference between an advisor and a planner? 2, what is a real financial advisor? 3, what is a fiduciary again? And 4, how do I fire my existing advisor? Those first 3 questions are kind of intertwined, but we'll try and work through them. So just before we jump into the questions, I want to add a couple of caveats to what I'm about to say. First, there are a lot of good advisors and planners out there, and there's also some bad ones too. The point of this series has been to give you the tools and resources to help find the best advisor for you, your family, and your situation. Second, I'm going to interchange the words advisor and planner throughout this episode, so please don't be confused by it. I'm going to address the differences between the 2 titles right away here, and that should serve as to who you should be looking for to help you. Lastly, fit is everything. What I mean is, when working with an advisor or a planner, you need a fit in their personality, the services being offered, and how they do business. You don't have to work with someone that you're not comfortable with. I know many Canadians who just deal with the revolving door of advisors at the banks that are just given an advisor. And what I mean by revolving door is that many bankers, like most others, want to further their career along. And these advisors move up the ranks career-wise, first starting in those lower positions at the bank, with the end goal being that they look to join the commercial banking team or financial planning, private banking, or even the wealth management units of the bank. This leads to a lot of turnover at the branches, hence the revolving door. Your advisor 1 month might not be in that same position the next month. This turnover in advisors, however, results in bank clients getting used to this experience and just dealing with whoever is available or they're assigned to the next time they need something or come in for advice. Many are accustomed to continually having to reintroduce themselves and their financial situation to new advisors. To that, I say stop. You should be the one to decide who to hire as your advisor. It's your money and the decision is yours as to who you trust to work with you. You deserve to be able to develop a long-term advisor-client relationship with someone that you enjoy working with. So take the necessary time, the same you would with your doctor or your accountant, to find an advisor that works for you. Don't just settle with the person you're given, because chances are there could be someone else who fits you better. Okay, rant over. So question 1, what is the difference between an advisor and a planner? This is kind of a loaded question, as up to this point, the title has been very interchangeable. When I look at my time at the bank, the financial planner role was that next step up from the financial advisor position. If I go back to my time in the wealth management side of the bank, which is the majority of my 26-year career, with that usually being the next level up for those bank branch financial planners, the investment advisor was and is the starting title. Meaning, once you had taken the necessary courses to be registered and licensed, your starting title is investment advisor. Even if you have a finance or economics degree, you still start as an investment advisor. Those investment advisors that take additional education and courses and that spend enough time advising clients to earn a designation were then able to change or upgrade that title. For example, taking a financial planning type course or earning that designation could allow you to use the financial planner or wealth advisor title. However, few use the financial planner title, as it could be confused with the bank branch financial planners, and wealth advisor just kind of sounds a bit cooler, right? On a side note, most of the financial planners at the bank level are required to get a planning designation to use that title. So many already have that additional education above the investment advisors. So coming back to what I was saying, I would kind of lump financial advisors and investment advisors together in that they are typically not as experienced and have not taken or added any significant courses or designations to be able to use the financial planner or portfolio manager titles. But even that doesn't fully explain it, as some of those advisors have spent their whole career without adding any designations or changing their title. They actually may have a lot of experience, but just not looked at getting more education or designations. Now, in provinces like Saskatchewan, Ontario, New Brunswick, and most recently Manitoba, the regulators' requirements in using the financial advisor or financial planner title are required that the financial planner has a higher standard required with more advanced courses needed versus that financial advisor needing basically the entrance exams to the industry. So, the answer to the question, in my opinion, a financial planner should be the better option for you over a financial advisor, as they've invested in a higher level of education to be able to use that title, and therefore should be providing you with more value on that planning side. One of the places we said in episode 2 that an advisor can provide value. Again, as long as there's a fit between you and that planner. That leads nicely to question 2. What is a real financial advisor or a real financial planner? Or more specifically, why am I adding real in front of those titles? So we discussed this in episode 2, where we talked about if you needed a financial advisor and how, regardless of who you are working with, you really want a real financial advisor or a real financial planner. The difference being the real advisor or planner is focused on you and helping you build a plan to reach your goals, not just selling you a product. But I can see how this can still be a bit confusing. So I'll try and sort it out a bit more here. First off, I take the title Real Financial Advisor and Real Financial Planner from Carl Richards, the author of The Behavior Gap and the One-Page Financial Plan. Carl has created a whole society of real financial advisors that meet to talk about ways to be better advisors, to make sure people know they exist, and to help their clients identify what matters most to them. They want to build you a plan that will walk you through not just today, but well into the future. The biggest difference is that they aren't just trying to sell you some products. In fact, they won't invest your money until they have a plan put together for you. They want to take the time to really know your situation and what's important to you to ensure the advice they are giving you fits. These real planners will take you through a process to ensure they have all the information they need to put that plan together. Remembering that we also said the plan is usually outdated before the ink dries, so making sure they continue to update it on a regular basis, and it being the center of where all advice, whether it be investment, tax, retirement, you get the idea, comes back to. It's not a, okay, we did the plan, now let's go invest your money. It's more of a, we've done the plan, and that's why we're investing your money this way. The focus should be more on the why versus the how, realizing that how you're going to meet that goal is still very important. The real advisor is working for your best interests and letting you know of any conflicts of interest. They'll be upfront about how they're compensated and what fees you're paid. And that's a great segue actually to our next question. Question 3, what is a fiduciary again? I mentioned fiduciary in our very first episode and gave a brief description. Most would think that their advisor has to act in their best interest, but here in Canada, that just isn't the case. There are times when the advisor is in a position of having to be a fiduciary, but the standard set is just suitability. That is, your advisor only has to do what's suitable. As long as what they recommend or advise is suitable, it's okay. That's how we end up with huge fees in investment products, Canada having some of the highest fees in the world, according to Morningstar. It's also how we end up with advisors recommending high commission insurance products to retirement savers instead of contributing to their RRSP or TFSA, as has been noted in the news lately and that regulators have stepped in to crack down on. If we go back to episodes 2 and 3, I talked about the titles and designations that you should be looking for. That being the title of financial planner with the CFP or Certified Financial Planner designation, and a portfolio manager with the CFA Chartered Financial Analyst or the Chartered Investment Manager, otherwise known as the CIM. And in an ideal world, someone who has both those titles. Now, I'm not just saying that to toot my own horn, as I do have both the financial planner and portfolio manager titles, but by working with someone with these titles, you should know that they are working as a fiduciary for you and looking out for your best interests. I assume when you go looking for advice, you want someone who's going to be a fiduciary, that being someone who must act legally in their client's best interest. That is what we want, right? You don't want someone making decisions on your finances that are putting themselves or their company they work for ahead of you. So when we talk about those titles, financial advisor, financial planner, both could be great in what they do. But going to that next level and looking for a fiduciary or someone who holds those designations, you have a better chance of finding that real financial advisor, someone who puts you first. So if you find yourself meeting with an advisor and they start recommending products or solutions before getting to know your story and circumstances, you have a pretty good idea you're talking to the wrong person. That real financial advisor would be taking the time to get to know you, why money is important to you, what the purpose of your savings and investments are, whether that's retirement or financial independence or leaving a legacy for the next generation. Knowing the why matters. So you can see now how a real financial advisor and a fiduciary are almost one and the same. Now, you may find the odd fiduciary that isn't a real advisor, but the real advisor is always wanting to act as that fiduciary or in your best interests. Okay, so let's cover that last question. Question 4, how do I fire my existing advisor? This is a good question and one that probably isn't talked about much. For the clients that I work with, those families that are planning for retirement or already in it, most were working with an advisor or another firm before moving to me. So, first, I would reiterate what I said earlier. It's your money, and you deserve to be able to develop a long term advisor client relationship with someone you enjoy working with. So, if you feel you've outgrown your current advisor, or you realize that they're not a real advisor and acting in your best interests, or the services being offered aren't sufficient for you anymore, I don't think you should feel bad for looking for someone that's a better fit. Here in Canada, it's relatively easy to make a switch. They'll have all the new forms for you to review and sign, and they'll handle the transferring of all your accounts, whether it be RRSPs, TFSAs, RESPs, non-registered accounts. Just about any account you have can be transferred other than active pension plans and some group retirement plans, just by completing and signing a simple transfer form. This form will allow the transfer of those accounts to happen in cash, or in many cases, if the advisor's firm can hold your existing investments in kind, resulting in no tax consequences or having to liquidate those current investments at that time. This can be advantageous so that you're not getting out of the market during the transfer. Your registered accounts like the RSP or TFSA would still remain in those account vehicles through the transfer. So there's no issue with there being any tax consequences with the transfer. Once the in-kind transfer reaches the new accounts with the new advisor, you can then transition over to the recommendations they've made. Typically, many firms, especially those pesky banks, will charge a transfer fee, quoting the administration that's needed to facilitate the transfer, but these will sometimes be picked up by the new advisor or their firm. You don't have to contact your former advisor, but I would recommend you do, as they will likely reach out to you anyway. They'll try and find out why you're making the switch, which can be good for them so that maybe they can get some feedback on ways to improve, or also good for you, as sometimes that new place may not be all it's cracked up to be. For example, I've had a few times over the years where a client was sold on the grass being greener over at a new advisor, only to have that conversation on why they're leaving and finding out that the new advisor was selling them on some things that weren't true. The new advisor was comparing apples to oranges, or hadn't actually disclosed all the fees that the client would have to pay, or even that the fees weren't transparent and the client would never really know. By having the conversation, it allowed them to make a more educated decision and actually decide to keep their accounts where they were. In the case that comes to mind, the client, a divorcee, that never looked after the finances in their prior relationship, was sold by an insurance advisor of higher returns or no fees. Upon reading the transfer form, I was able to look up the destination funds that the new advisor was recommending, only to see that the cost of the new higher returning fund was actually twice as expensive as her current portfolio. Now, I'm a huge fan of transparency, so this client had noticed my fees coming out of her account. And the new salesperson she was talking to sold her on a fund that had done better in hindsight, but it was due to taking on a lot more risk. She was also sold on the idea of not seeing the fees. But there is no free lunch in investing. Just because you don't see the fees doesn't mean they're not there. I told her that the fees were actually twice as much as she was currently paying, but they were hidden inside the fund so she wouldn't see them. After that conversation, she decided she liked the transparency and wasn't quite as risky as the new advisor had thought. So she kept the accounts with me. Often your former advisor will try to keep your business. So if you've done the homework and understand why you're making that change, just let them know that. They understand, as again, that's where most new clients come from, another advisor. Okay, so to recap everything, it's relatively easy to change advisors. Ideally, you want to look for a fiduciary who looks out for your best interests, someone who's a real advisor and isn't just selling you a product, but focuses on building a plan before they're investing your money. So generally speaking, a financial planner. I think that covers our topics today. Again, if you have any general questions or would like any retirement-related questions answered on future podcasts, please email us at info@retirereadypodcast.com. Be sure to subscribe and give us a review on your favorite podcast player. You can also subscribe to the Wake Up semi-monthly newsletter by visiting the Awaken Wealth site, which is awakenwealth.ca. Be sure to check back in 2 weeks for our next episode, where we'll have our first guest speaker on to help us wrap up this session on finding an advisor. Thanks again for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you back for the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the Retire Ready podcast. To subscribe to this podcast or to learn more, please head on over to awakenwealth.ca/Retire Ready podcast. Investment services are provided through Awaken Investments of Align Capital Partners Incorporated, an approved trade name of Align Capital Partners Inc. /ACPI. Only investment-related products and services are offered through ACPI or Awaken Investments of ACPI and covered by the Canadian Investor Protection Fund. Tax planning, financial planning, and insurance services are provided through Awaken Wealth Management Limited. Awaken Wealth is an independent company separate and distinct from ACPI or Awaken Investments of ACPI. Awaken Wealth are not licensed tax professionals, and you should consult with your tax advisor before acting on any recommendations. Investments and investing strategy should be evaluated based on your own objectives. Listeners of this podcast should use your best judgment and consult a financial expert prior to making any investment decisions based on the information found in this podcast.